A press conference to announce heroin busts in Scott County. At the same time, they're handing out free syringes to heroin users at a building next door to the police department who sometimes shoot up right across the street. Cops drive and walk by, watching guys like this with a bag full of needles so disoriented he can't figure out the building is closed. It's called a needle exchange because intravenous drug users are supposed to exchange used needles for clean ones to reduce the spread of disease. But it looks more like a needle supply. I went undercover for 5 weeks watching exchanges in Scott County and in Jefferson County, where heroin users are often lined up waiting for it to open. They bring in their children, their bikes, their dogs, but most of the time they don't bring any needles to exchange.
And I even noticed over time, repeat customers still not bringing needles with them. Your thoughts on that?
To me, it's more important to get them the clean needles to prevent sharing.
Often, customers walk out and dole out bags of syringes to people waiting nearby, like this guy. Or this man, one of the frequent customers here who never brings needles to exchange. He takes off on a 20-minute drive to where a man is waiting on a scooter who pulls something out of his mouth and makes a hand-to-hand transaction. When I catch up with the van driver heading out with his passengers, he doesn't want to talk about it.
Take people to work, drop them off.
I know, and I got you. Why do you keep going to needle exchange?
Needle exchange?
Yeah.
How long do they wait before they're using their taxpayer-funded syringes? 22 seconds after this woman leaves with bags full of needles, a syringe is passed and one of the people in the waiting car uses the needle at the front entrance to the U of L School of Public Health. These two people walk to a spot across from the main entrance to the public library, where he's the lookout while she shoots up and leaves the needle behind. This woman goes straight to a nearby business, shoots up, leaves the stuff on the floor by a wastebasket, and then has to sit down outside because she's having a hard time. This man walks a block away, sits down along busy Broadway, unpacks his syringe, gloves, and gauze, takes off his sock, and takes his time sticking the needle between his toes with kids walking by and people staring.
I haven't seen that here, but I guess you just gave an example for Broadway. They're going to be using, and I'm happy they're using a clean needle, my thought.
So what are they using? Health Department stats show it's mostly heroin, but also meth and cocaine. We've been told needle exchanges offer counseling and treatment to try to stop the cycle of addiction. So we send a producer in undercover with a hidden camera.
You have the right to be respected.
A worker reads him this form of his rights.
How many think you need? It'll last you a week.
Asks how often he uses drugs.
Okay, how many times a day are you using?
I'd rather not talk about that.
Well, you have to, so you know how many needles to give you.
Seconds later, he's on his way, needles in hand.
And all the worker did was just read this form, basically. Didn't offer any counseling, didn't ask any questions to try to get the person into treatment or anything like that.
You got to meet the person where they're at, and so if they're not ready for treatment, there's not really, you don't need to talk about it.
What the worker does do is explain if you tell a police officer you have needles from this exchange, you won't be charged with possessing drug paraphernalia or any substance on the needle.
And the police officers are on board if they pull you over.
But it comes off sounding like helping a person using drugs to not get busted by police.
As long as they're not sharing needles and preventing disease, I think that's probably a good thing.
That's tragic. There's theory, practical application, two different things. Theory is a good theory. The practical application by these people is really abhorrent.
When we share all of this with the state Senate president, Robert Stivers, he says changes are necessary now.
They are not taking needles out of the system. They are just supplying more to the department. This was not the intent of the legislation. They are doing nothing but promoting greater use of heroin.
The Metro Health Department says it's had more than 1,000 people come in to get free needles in the first 4 months. They say 64 of those drug users have been referred to 7 county services case managers for treatment options. As for Senator Stivers' comment that they're promoting greater use of heroin, Dr. Moyer says, quote, study after study shows syringe exchange programs do not increase drug use. John Bowl, Wave 3 News. It's a question thousands of us have to answer every day. Where am I supposed to ride my bike if there isn't a bike lane? Out here in the middle of the lane? Over on the far right? Off the road on the shoulder? Or up here on the sidewalk? The answer is literally a matter of life or death. Cars are stacked up behind Cherokee Shill. She's used to it. She rides in the middle of the lane and she reads the regulations.
KRS 189.3406A, it says you shall occupy as much of your lane as possible.
Biking 18 miles each way to work near Lexington, she's been stopped a lot. Officer number 1.
He said, you're not doing anything wrong.
Officer number 2.
He pulled out his book. He's like, look, I'm going to show you what the law says. So we started to read the statute together. And I said, you know, and we're going through it. And he stopped halfway through it. And I said, no, it continues. And so we read it all the way through to the end. And he kind of stopped. And he looked at it, and he looks at the road.
Other officers took a stand, citing her 7 times for careless driving.
They had it in their mind that I was doing something wrong, and they were going to cite me.
Schill went to trial on all 7 at once and even had a leading bike advocate for her lawyer. Still, the judge ruled she should have ridden on the road shoulder instead of on the roadway. She lost. Chips Cronin lost too. Lost his life.
Threw him into this girder right here.
Knocked by this van into girder 55 on the 2nd Street Bridge, pedaling home on the right side of the right lane.
Had he been claiming his lane, or had he been on the sidewalk, that he would be alive, but he followed the rules of the road. So he was in the right. Unfortunately, he was dead right.
Kentucky law says a bicyclist is no different from a motorist, has to obey the same traffic rules, can't use the sidewalk because they can surprise drivers, can't ride more than 2 abreast. As a slower moving vehicle, has to drive as closely as practical to the right-hand boundary, and when there's more than 1 lane in each direction, can get out and claim the lane. Problem is,
whoa, that guy almost got me.
There's a big difference between the regulations and reality. There's a lot of confusion and road rage out here on the streets, but this time, I have a camera. Kentucky law says passing cars have to be at least 3 feet away. When I ride as far to the right as I can, vehicles like this miss me by inches. When I get out there and claim my lane, it gets worse. When people pulling trailers go by, they forget about the trailers when they pass and cut me off. On River Road, a key artery under public debate right now, cars and trucks often refuse to move over. When I ask other cyclists what they do, their answers vary.
Claim my lane, you know, because I hate to do that to other people, but you can't let somebody cut you that close. People are crazy. They don't like bicycles, and I definitely try to stay as far right as I can.
This is the reason why the law says to ride as closely as practical to the right. The right side of the road is often an unrideable, potholed mess, or you get slapped by bushes and trees. And road shoulders, where Cherokee Schill was told to ride, often have rumble strips and busted glass. Extra lanes don't help. As far over to the right as I can get, with another lane to my left, side swipes continue. Again, on the far right of the far right lane,
whoa,
some refuse to move over. This white box truck literally scrapes me.
Whoa.
So it's like we have this complete lack of knowledge of what is actually safe on a public right-of-way.
And while Cherokee Schill was cited 7 times for careless driving between Nicholasville and Lexington, guess how many times Louisville police have ticketed cyclists in the past 7 years? You're looking at it. Once, blowing a stop sign in 2011. John Bull, Wave 3 News.